News, leader in world news stories. Today, we have something very special. Without further ado, let's send it out to head journalist Daniel, who will bring you this amazing story. Thank you, Dave. 7.3 billion people. That's how many people inhabit the Earth right now, and it is rising. Today in my story, I'll lead you through what factors are causing this overpopulation, what risks this overpopulation imposes on the survival of the human race, and what can be done to help change this. Now, the main growth is not coming from the developed countries such as the USA or France or any other country in Europe. These countries are instead farther in the demographic transition model, in stages 4 or even going to 5, where the population growth is stagnant or it's decreasing. The main growth is coming from countries in the second or third stage in the demographic transition model, such as Brazil, Kenya, Nigeria, or other countries that are least developed. To understand overpopulation, I spoke to several different people, including scientist Earl. I conducted a live interview with scientist Earl to see what he thinks is causing this overpopulation. Can you hear me?
Yep, hear you loud and clear, Daniel.
So what do you attribute to the overpopulation of the Earth that's occurring right now? All the way from the first billion people to be on the Earth, or at the beginning of the 18th century when the Industrial Revolution happened, all the way to the 7.3 billion that are currently inhabiting the Earth. And then at our current rate, a billion added every 12 years. Like, what is causing this in your opinion, in your research? I attribute the main growth in population to 3 different factors: food production and distribution, a rising standard of living, and the medical advances that the world has seen in the past 20, 30, 40 years. Advances in food production and distribution, a higher standard of living, and medical advances. So what is causing overpopulation from food? How does that affect anything? Countries like China or America, increases in technology have created a larger amount of production in agriculture in all types, from new technologies such as like appliances or vehicles to chemical technologies, to GMOs. And overpopulation is, although these countries that have this technology benefit the most from it, this is trickling down into the least developed countries that are now using different forms of vehicles or farming devices to help increase their production. Technologies in agriculture have increased the population. I see. So what about standard of living? How has that changed? How has that influenced overpopulation? Massive population growth has seen countries such as China develop material goods in 40 years that took countries that we see as more advanced, such as America, 100 years. Standard of living has also just risen across the whole world, and things such as water or access to facilities, although there is still much disparity in between the first and third world countries and the difference between them. I see the rising standard of living has attributed to the rising population in the world, and you also said something about the medical advances also being a platform for the overpopulation that's occurring right now. So can you explain that a little bit further? And I think the most influential part of overpopulation is the medical advances that have happened in the past 50 years. All the way from the vaccine for influenza being created in 1945 to the Human Genome Project being completed in 2003. These all have contributed to major breakthroughs in medical technology and have led to help in least developed countries where this outstanding population growth is occurring. Medical Care Development International, or UNICEF, are using these new technologies to help these least developed countries. And this is where the population growth is occurring. Now with this help, there's a lower infant mortality rate and a longer life expectancy. This is one of the main reasons for the overpopulation of the Earth, and it's what's leaving us with these problems that come from. 3 factors that you attribute to overpopulation are food production and distribution increases, a higher standard of living all around the world, and medicinal technology that's been created in the past decades. Still, those all seem like very valid points, and then at the end you said something about this creating risks to the human survival. That seems very interesting. Scientist Earl had just explained to me what is causing our overpopulation.
this was kind of interesting, and then he left off saying that there are issues that come from this. In order to understand this better, I spoke with an esteemed population expert, Charles Henderson.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Charles Henderson. I've actually recently been doing my own research and talking to a few people and discovered that our population is rising at a very fast rate. I was lucky to talk to a few people, including scientist Earl. He told me the reasons as to why our population is growing, and then he left me with a point that resonated. That our population growing at such a quick rate can lead to a lot of problems, and I guess that's what you're here to talk about. You're an esteemed researcher in the field of population, and it'd be nice to get your thoughts.
Oh, Daniel, it is my pleasure to be here, and I'm so happy to talk and share my information with you. And yes, there are problems coming from the overpopulation. See, the two ones that I believe are affecting us most are resource depletion and then harm to our natural environment. These things are all side effects of overpopulation. If we do not help anything now, they will be the downfall of humanity.
So resource depletion and then harm to our environment. Those are the two things that are coming from it. That makes sense. Can you go any further into how our resources are being depleted and what exactly that means?
I can delve further into this subject, Daniel. Now let me start off with a fact. We are about 50 years away from depletion of our natural gas reserves and our oil reserves, and about 115 years away from running out of our coal reserves. You see, these are in the thing that we call proven reserves, not potential reserves. These potential ones are things that are thought to be existed, but actually have not yet been discovered. Now, there is a chance that we could stumble upon one, and we could find a whole lot. But if we do not do that, it is a very short time before we run out. We are now depending more and more on these different natural resources. And if we do not find an alternate soon enough, we are going to be out like that.
Wow, that's quite an astonishing thing to think about, that we have so few years left of such essential resources that we use every single day. It's kind of glaring us in the face now if we don't find some solutions. That's one way that the expanding population is affecting the human race. You also said something about harm to the environment being another effect. How's this happening? How can you explain that further?
Yes, of course I can talk about this, Daniel. The environment is being destroyed due to the fact that our population is growing. Things such as deforestation, global warming, pollution, all side effects of overpopulation. Now, the places where this is happening in the greatest amounts, such as China or India, where there are billions of people, are places that cannot necessarily deal with it as effectively as developed nations can, or they do not have the need to, they do not want to. Instead, they focus more on surviving. And through surviving, they use these natural resources that emit gases into our ozone that cause these problems. So with this growing rise of people comes a growing need for land. Land for commerce, such as farms or business buildings, and land for living. And with this comes deforestation, and it destroys habitats of all types of animals. And then a final side effect that is bound to happen with growing population is a growing amount of waste and pollution. And then we are not dealing with this waste correctly, or properly, or enough. Now, it is not only hurting environments with animals and other types of wildlife, but also us humans. It is contaminating water, safe drinking water, and that is no longer safe due to runoff or other things that we could easily prevent. Now, this pollution, this deforestation, this climate change, it's all the effect of us growing as a human race, and it is all threatening our survival. Things that are a side effect of our growing population can be combated. It just takes a few people to make a difference, and stuff such as this news story, this interview right here, will help. This is going to help because people will hear about it, and they'll realize that there are issues that come from us growing as a human race, and there are things that threaten our survival. And I'm glad to be here, and I really appreciate getting the opportunity to speak to you.
So our environment is getting destroyed in several different ways by side effects of the increasing population. That's another crazy thing to look at, and it seems as though if these problems that are coming from overpopulation aren't dealt with soon, that there are going to be some major problems.
It's been quite a pleasure talking to you, Charles Henderson, and your points have really hit home. I'm going to see if I can do some more research and see if there are any ways in which we can combat the effects of overpopulation, or just overpopulation in general, and stopping this insane rise. Thank you once again.
That was some insightful information from Charles Henderson. So now, overpopulation. We know what's causing it, and we know what effects it has. But how can we slow it down? I did quite a bit of research on my own, and this is what I found.
Through extensive thought, pondering, and research, I discovered one solution that was prominent in everything I read. Education. Not only general education, but more specifically in reproductive education and family planning. This education also needs to be focused in developing nations and in girls in these nations especially. According to an Economic and Social Council from the UN, higher education is linked very closely with lower fertility rates. Educating families and having less children and safe contraceptive techniques will lead to lower birth rates and is the best solution to overpopulation.
Overpopulation. We now know what's causing it, what effects it has, and how we can slow it down. I've been Daniel Basquignan-Wiley, head journalist at Hug News. Back to you, Dave Fern. Wow, what an intriguing story. Thank you for your insight, Daniel. In other news, be sure to catch us next week for a special coverage on cheese rolling. I've been Dave Fern for Hug News, signing out.
What is it?
Mom, it's not over!